Chapter 35. Hero. Kyle stepped out of the van and wandered across to Chase. "What's up?" the stocky woman asked. "Joe sent me over," Kyle lied. "She told me to take over so you could go back to the house for a cup of tea and a bite." "Thanks," Chase grinned. "I'm busting for a pee, actually. It's undignified having to squat in the bushes." Kyle cleared his throat as she started walking away. "Sorry, Chase, but I don't reckon I'll make much of a guard if I'm left to fend off the enemy with my bare hands." Chase burst out laughing. "God, I'm daft," she giggled as she unhitched the strap from her shoulder and passed the rifle to Kyle. "Do you know how it works?" "As a matter of fact, I do," Kyle said, expertly clicking off the safety and raising the heavy rifle so that the muzzle pointed at Chase's head. "Start walking back towards the house, quickly and quietly. Be a good girl, or I'll have to shoot you." Chase's eyelids fluttered like she'd heard a tasteless joke, until Kyle's grim expression made it clear that he wasn't joking. It was 200 meters to the house, and Kyle gave his hostage a couple of shoves in the back to make her pick up the pace. He had no cover, and it would only take someone looking out of a window to turn the whole show into a shootout. Keeping his finger on the trigger, Kyle cut behind the house, hoping to find Tom in the courtyard, but it looked like he'd gone searching for keys. He did find a four-wheeled trolley with pneumatic tyres that had been used to shift some of the heavier studio equipment the day before. Kyle looked at Chase. "Take it." "You're off your skull," she sneered. "You might well be right," Kyle said, too nervous even to force a grin, as part of him wished he'd taken the simple option of driving out of the gate and leaving the tricky stuff to the cops. Rifle poised, Kyle led into the house through the chunky back door, with Chase and the squeaking trolley wheels behind him. He leaned into the kitchen and was relieved to find it empty, then cut across the hallway and peeked inside the giant dining hall before looking back at Chase. "Leave the trolley. You go in first." Kyle counted 8 AFA members in the room. Chase, Viv, Jay, Joe, plus the 2 teenage lads who'd been working as stagehands and the women who worked the cameras. Tom was the only absentee. Apart from Chase, they were all standing close to the cage. Kyle clicked the gun into single shot mode and fired around at the wall to grab everyone's attention. "Hands up, everyone!" he shouted. Kyle reckoned that Joe, who had a gun, and Viv, who didn't, were the most likely to give him trouble. He closed Joe down with the gun aimed at her head and tried to sound as friendly as his nerves would let him. "I think we've made our point, Joe," Kyle said. "Let Cobb out of the cage and I'll take him to hospital. You'll be long gone by the time the cops get here." "You haven't got the guts to shoot us," Joe hissed. "And don't you care about the animals?" Cherub training teaches you to study the dynamics of the group you're trying to infiltrate. The AFAs were simple. Joe was the boss, and the others were all scared of her. Kyle reckoned he'd have everyone except Viv under his thumb once Joe submitted. "Joe, if I back off now, you'll either pull your gun and kill me on the spot, or stick me in the cage with Cobb. So I might not be a cold-blooded killer, but I'm smart enough to know that shooting you may be my only option at this stage." Joe mulled over Kyle's words before slowly pulling her gun and handing it to him backwards. "Thank you," Kyle nodded, managing a brief smile before looking around at Chase. "Wheel the trolley up to the cage." Then he looked back at Joe. "Open it up and get the boys to lift Cobb onto the trolley." Kyle was fairly certain that Joe was the only one with a gun, but kept his eyes open, looking for any sudden movements. The cage clanked open and Cobb made a low moan as the 2 stagehands lifted him onto the trolley. His hair glistened with sweat, and his giant t-shirt was a mass of puke and bloodstains. "Who has the keys to the blue van?" Kyle asked. "I always knew you were a soft prick, Kyle," Viv shouted angrily. "Your kid brother James has more balls than you." "Soft prick with an SA-80 pointing at your head," Kyle grinned, feeling much more confident now that he had Joe under control. "Someone give me the keys." "Your boyfriend took them away," Viv sneered. Kyle cursed his luck. Tom must have been cutting around the front of the house towards the courtyard as he'd come in the back with Chase. "I need your phone, Joe," Kyle said, trying not to let on that he wasn't sure what to do next. Joe handed it to Kyle without any fuss. He stuffed it inside his trousers and started backing up towards the door. "I want you all to stay in this room and keep calm. Once you hear me drive away, you can do whatever the hell you like. Chase, you pull the trolley. Jay, come with us to help lift Cobb into the back of the van." Kyle thought about ordering Chase to wheel the trolley up to the white van parked near the gate, but even if the trolley made it up the rutted path, the bumpy ride would knock the stuffing out of Cobb. Kyle couldn't fetch the van back himself because he wouldn't be able to control the others from 200 meters away, and he reckoned Joe had more weapons stashed upstairs. If he asked someone else to go get the van, they'd most likely use it to escape. With hindsight, Kyle realised that the best plan would have been to put Chase in the van and reverse it back towards the house. Now he was left with no choice but to go out the back and hope that Tom would hand over the keys to one of the other vans. "Roll him out," Kyle ordered. Kyle checked that Tom wasn't waiting outside before Chase pulled the trolley with Cobb on it along the hallway and out into the sun. "You out here, Tom?" Kyle yelled, trying to sound casual as he wondered what might be going through his boyfriend's mind, or if Tom even realised that he'd taken the others hostage. As Chase and the trolley squeaked across the lawn towards the courtyard, Kyle kept his finger on the trigger and Jay walked alongside him. It took half a minute to reach the two parked vans. Kyle shouted again. "Tom?" He walked away from the trolley and looked around and under the two vans. He shook with fear as he tore open the back doors of the blue van and pointed his rifle at the cushions and junk inside. "Tom, what's the matter, mate?" Kyle asked as he crept around the side of the van. As he walked parallel to the open window on the passenger side, Tom popped up out of the footwell and aimed a revolver through the window frame 50 centimeters behind Kyle's head. "Drop the rifle," Tom ordered. Kyle turned slightly so that he could see Tom's shaking hands reflected in the door mirror. "I did this for you, Tom," Kyle lied. "You said it isn't right. We can leave together, dump Cobb at the local hospital, and get the hell out of here." "I told you that the only way we'd get away with this is if we went through with it," Tom said angrily. "You've just made a bloody enormous mess." "I thought," Kyle said, wondering how he could talk his way around Tom as he shifted the gun across his chest. "Hold still." "I thought you and me had something special," Kyle said, trying to sound needy. "Kyle, I don't..." Tom faltered. "I can't believe you did this, dude. I don't want to shoot you, but I don't want to get nicked either." "I guess I'm an idiot," Kyle said, looking down submissively, like he'd given up hope. "If you're not coming with me, I can't see any point." Kyle reached across his chest to unhook the shoulder strap holding up the gun. He could see how scared Tom was and guessed that he'd fly up like a jelly if it went off. Keeping one eye on Tom's reflection in the door mirror, and with the dangerous end of the rifle pointing harmlessly towards the ground, Kyle pushed the strap off his shoulder, but grabbed the trigger with his opposite hand as the rifle fell. The round punched harmlessly into the dirt, but it made Tom jolt, exactly as Kyle had hoped. As Tom's revolver pointed at the sky, Kyle plunged his hand inside the van. He pushed Tom's hands against the roof and twisted the gun from his grasp as Chase dived for the rifle. Kyle launched a savage backwards kick, hitting Chase in the guts and knocking her into the dirt. With Tom's pistol in one hand, he spun 180 degrees and pressed his shoe against Chase's ribs as he tore the rifle away. Kyle screamed at Tom, "Get out of there and help Jay load Cobb into the back." As the two young men lifted Cobb from the trolley onto the cushions inside the van, Kyle looked in the front and was relieved to see keys dangling out of the steering column. Once Cobb was laid out and the back doors had slammed, Kyle threw the rifle across the passenger seat and started the engine. The van juddered, almost stalling as he headed for the road. He left the engine running as he jumped out and swung open the gate at the top of the drive, all the while keeping a wary eye on the house in case someone had found a gun and decided to come after him. Once he was safely back inside the van, Kyle pulled out into a country lane and worked his way up through the gears before grabbing Joe's mobile out of his pocket. He dialed the Cherub campus emergency line. "I'm coming out of Hummingbird Farm," Kyle screamed. "I need urgent directions to the nearest hospital." Kyle recognized the voice of Chloe Blake, a recently promoted mission controller. "Are you badly injured?" "I've survived worse," Kyle said, as he checked in the mirror to make sure nobody was following him. "But I've got Nick Cobb in the back, and I have absolutely no idea if he's going to make it."